Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu salam ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's On Disciplining the Soul, Kitab Riyadh al-Nafs. And this is we are going to read the very last part of the translator's notes, a summary of of this book. And it is followed by a summary of the book of Breaking the Two Desires. So inshallah we'll read both with the Azza. We are on page 64, the Latin numerals of the introduction, the translator's introduction. An exposition of the signs of good character. That's number 9. One can only identify evil traits within oneself if one is aware of their excellent opposites. These are listed in the Quran and the Hadith, and exemplified in the lives of the Prophet and the saints, awliya. Some incidents in which Ghazali proceeds to cite. Here Ghazali's position is far from that of Aristotle, who had relied on reason and consensus alone. That's the very last part that we have read at the end of the last session. Number 10, an exposition of the way in which young children should be disciplined and the manner of their upbringing and improvement of their characters. That's also, we ended with that, and we said that Imam Al-Ghazali began the upbringing of children, and also what to teach them in the at the beginning of Ihya Ulumuddin. We have the introduction, we have the book of knowledge, and then we have the epistle on Islamic creed, the Jerusalem epistle. There he said that children should be encouraged to memorize really the Aqidah, and they will later on understand that. So the issue of memorization, which nowadays the curriculum in schools in Palestine does not encourage memorizing texts the way we used as children. Also, they don't encourage them to memorize poetry, which is a very sad thing. So whatever your cultural background as a Muslim, for example, if your background is Urdu, there is poetry to memorize there. If your background is Persian, there's poetry to memorize there, etc. It's very important to raise kids with poetry. An exposition of the refinement of aspirancy, the preliminaries of the spiritual struggle, and the progressive induction of the aspirant in treading the path of discipline. This is one of the most interesting sections in the Ihya. The translator continues, Abd Hakim Murad, Timothy Winter, revealing as it does the outline of Ghazali's spiritual practice as he must have taught it to his own disciples. Although it is not clear whether it was written primarily for teachers or students, it functioned as a kind of summary, recapitulating the discussions of this and previous book concerning the heart, the ego, the spiritual guide, and mystical experience. Many of the practical aspects of Sufi training seem never to have been set down in writing, which makes this section of particular value. Aspirancy. Irada. According to a useful definition, the desire to come to the beloved through inner combat, mujahada. Put differently, it is the voluntary quest of the heart for spiritual sustenance. Its agent is a murid, a word sometimes rendered as neophyte or disciple, but in reality denoting any spiritual seeker who has not yet attained the goal. Irada had been used in early Islam to mean will, and although by Muhasibi's time it had acquired a rather more specialized connotation among pietists and Sufis, for whom it denoted the sincere will to obey God. It was in the 4th and 5th Islamic centuries, the 10th and 11th of the Christian calendar or the Common Era, that its later sense of spiritual ambition was developed. To will for God truly was to renounce one's own will for anything. It was to feel a sense of alienation from the world and an awakening love and longing for Him. Irada thus supplies the motive behind refining the character. Is it possible to include in irada to will for God truly was to renounce one's own will for anything else? Uh, when it comes uh, to any activity, um, political, economic, social activity within the realm of art, if there is clear dictate in the Quran or in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, then the irada is just that. Um, when we say that it is true, I mean, what the Abul Hakim Murad here says, to will for God truly was to renounce one's own will, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed His will in the Quran. So rather than saying, for example, the Quran says this or the Hadith says this, when it's an authentic sound tradition, rather than saying my philosophy, my opinion, it simply said this is really what the law giver dictated, and I have no separate will. I have no. There's no need. There's no. Exactly, we are where we are as humanity because of people venturing into their own uh, hawa, if you will, caprice, where they are willing to defy the law, break the law, and cross the red lines. Just to give an example of two persons, one drinks alcohol, and the second one does not drink alcohol, but he makes it halal. Legal is a different story. Declaring it halal, that it is not haram, or gambling. There are so many forms of gambling. Whatever is the case, the next thing will be, there is. I have read, and I mean, there is a European official who called for punishing the third world countries that do not support gay rights and gay marriage. So they have usurped wealth of the third world during the colonial period, and now they are punishing them for upholding their own um, values and virtues. Once the spiritual wayfarer has set off, numerous distractions and obstacles beset him. Some of these are so dangerous that he must cling to his guide, as though he were a blind man walking by a river. The most intransigent are money, status, conformism, and sin. Attachment to money is to be shaken off by giving away what one does not truly need. Satisfaction with one's social status can be removed by acts of public humility. Sin is to be avoided by adhering sincerely to the revealed law. Conformism or imitation, taqlid, the vice to which Ghazali himself had fallen prey before his conversion, is a little more complex. It's the blind acceptance of doctrine on the authority of others and a consequent fanaticism on its behalf. One should, uh, not all people, most people would still subscribe to conformism, not as a matter of choice. You're not going to, uh, there are millions of people who lead a simple life where they cannot really establish proofs on their own. So they resort to conformism, really. They have no choice. But as he came to appreciate, this is not a secure path to truth. Rather, spiritual tasting thou is the only sound epistemology. As he writes elsewhere, the meanings of the divine attributes here in brackets are to be known through unveiling mukashafa and witnessing mushahada, so that their realities become clear to the mystics through a proof in which all error is impossible. How great a gulf divides us, or divides this from belief, i'tiqad, taken through conformism from one's parents and teachers, even if this be accompanied by dialectical theological proofs. When the beginning of the Al-Muqad min al-Dalal, there he cites the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, يولد مولود على الفطرة فأبواه يهودانه أو ينصرانه أو مجوسانه. One is born in a natural state of disposition, the fitra, it is her parents that uh, make him make her Jew or Christian or Magian, and that's really through the blind conformism. But people can on their own realize, if we talk about contradictions within one's faith, so it doesn't have to be a complex elaborate search for proofs, etc. Although Ghazali remained committed until his death to the Ash'ari theological school, in his mystical writings he emphasizes that taqlid is a veil, and that is not a condition of aspirancy that one adhere to any particular school of thought, madhab. This attitude was informed both by his juristic background, which recognizes the benefits of divergent opinions, and also the Sufi tradition, which had often held that the Sufis regard the differences between the jurists as correct and do not object to what those who follow other positions hold. For them, every mujtahid is correct, and everyone who believes in an Islamic school of doctrine being supported by texts from the Quran and Sunnah and being of those able to derive such doctrines is adhering to a true doctrine. Uh, Before we move to the parable of the blind man and the elephant, I would like to give an example uh, from Imam Ghazali's writings in discussing the minimum amount of water that remain pure, tahir, even if a najasa impurity falls into it or is mixed with it. Imam Ghazali, who is Shafi'i in terms of school of jurisprudence, he said it's better to adopt the Maliki position because of the, he explains this because of the scarcity of water. And this is something very beautiful. Now, I have cited this this position of Imam Ghazali time and again. A Shafi'i scholar, a mujtahid in the madhab, says on this particular issue, do adopt the Maliki position. He did not change the Shafi'i position, but he said, for all practical reasons, because of scarcity of water, because the Maliki school would allow a smaller amount with impurity to remain tahir. That's their understanding, that's their ijtihad. So it's to the benefit of the believer, the believers. Elsewhere in the Ihya, Ghazali had used the celebrated parable of the blind man and the elephant groping around the animal. Each constructed a different conception of it. But although each of these men was partially correct, only vision could truly comprehend the elephant in its completeness. Thus, by implication, are the formal theological schools of this day, which argue about issues such as predestination, while handicapped by reason, a faculty insufficient to grasp realities which transcend its own nature. Another obstacle to spiritual progress is provided by the khawatir, the usually irrelevant thoughts which come at random into the mind. Ideas that cross one's mind and which may destroy the novice's concentration. They can be from God or a good angel, in which case they are termed ilham, inspiration, but more usually they are from the devil and the egotism of the soul, and are called waswas, whispering, or hadith al-nafs, a discourse of the soul. Their source is to be known from the action they encourage. Although they are not a sin, the soul at peace is the one that is liberated from these distractions. And it is said that God protected his prophet from them. This is the concept of asma, infallibility, if you will. And all the prophets enjoy this isma, this infallibility. They could make judgmental mistakes, but no grave sins, some of which are attributed to the prophets in the Old Testament. It shouldn't be the case. Like what has been ascribed to Prophet David, alayhi salam. From an Islamic perspective, this is absolutely unacceptable. A prophet would never do what has been ascribed to him. The Sufis, however, have disagreed as to whether this liberation can ever be complete. In order to calm the heart and minimize external distractions, the spiritual wayfarer may be advised to enter a retreat, khalwa, for up to 40 days. Here he will occupy himself with prayer and the remembrance of God, and intensify the struggle against his lower self. The Shaykh will have instructed him to repeat certain brief litanies, awrad, and these he should concentrate upon until he can repeat them without moving his tongue. This is called the remembrance of the heart, dhikr al-qalb. When it is perfected, so that no distractions remain, a condition of rapturous love of God ensues, and God may, in His grace and mercy, bestow spiritual unveiling upon the seeker. As Ghazali writes elsewhere, if his aspirancy is true, his ambition pure, and his concentration good, so that his appetites do not pull at him, and he is not distracted by hadith and nafs towards the attachments of the world, the gleams of the truth will shine in his heart. At the outset, this will resemble a brief, inconstant shaft of lighting, which then returns, perhaps after a delay. If it returns, it may be fleeting or firm, and if it is firm, thabit, it may or may not endure for some time. States such as these may come upon each other in succession, or only one type may be present. In this regard, the stages of God's saints, awliya, are as innumerable as their outer attributes and qualities. Done with uh, summary of the book on disciplining the soul, Riyad al-Nafs. Now the summary of the book of breaking the two desires. In his prologue, Ghazali summarizes the dangers of gluttony and excessive lust, pointing out that they are the greatest of the mortal vices. Satiety encourages lust, which in turn leads to a range of further defects. For fame and wealth are no more than means by which man gratifies his baser cravings and conduce to enmity, injustice, and corruption. Number one, an exposition of the merit of hunger and a condemnation of satiety. This is a collection of material which recalls the poverty and hunger of the first Muslims. The author's purpose is a strategic one, for later in the book he will explain that hunger is a means, not an end, and that the ideal to be aimed for is moderation. In fact, Imam Ghazali does say that sometimes he the apparent text would include an extreme example that it is not intended for itself. It's only to influence, to cause change. Number two, an exposition of the benefits of hunger and the evils of satiety. This section is a good example of Ghazali's methodical approach. He writes that hunger has 10 benefits. It purifies the faculties of spiritual perception. Number two, it softens the heart and renders it more receptive to divine grace. Number three, it is a form of humbling the ego. Number four, it reminds the novice of the sufferings of the poor and the punishments of hell. Number five, it weakens the passional self and enables one to control the sex drive more easily. Number six, it causes the seeker to need less sleep. So when Imam Ghazali speaks about Qiyam al-Layl, the night prayers, extra prayers, these are voluntary prayers. One of the things that he advises the seeker, if you will, um, mm, not to eat in the sense of a late meal, not to eat a heavy meal, etc. That would help, and that's one of the things. No, it's not the only one, of course. Um, committing sins during the day would prevent you from, as a possibility. That's But regarding the food, if one eats and sleeps, he or she might not get up to pray these extra prayers, night vigil, just simply liberally trying to and practically any time before Fajr is Qiyam Layl. So one could, in principle, just simply wake up. Uh, this is not really to limit it to this, but I'm trying simply uh, to uh, to explain that just allocate enough time for wudu, for your purification, and enough time for at least 2 rak'ahs before Fajr, inshallah. Number 7, it reduces the time wasted in preparing and eating food. Number 8, it benefits the health. Number 9, it saves money. Number 10, it hence enables one to comply with God's command to help the poor. Regarding saving money, when I read this, I kind of smiled because during Ramadan, people, of course, abstain. They do fast, but they don't save money at all, because when they break fast, it's a feast, and they consume in Ramadan what they don't consume throughout the. I mean, they usually don't do that during the rest of the year on daily basis, and the food that is wasted and thrown away. Number 3, an exposition of the method by which discipline is used to subjugate the greed of the belly. The spiritual seeker has 4 duties in regard to food. He must only eat food that is lawful. He should, number 2, he should assess and reduce the frequency of his eating. Number 3, he should estimate and control the speed with which he eats. And number 4, he should look to the kind of food he is eating and ensure that he avoids luxury. All of these are to be investigated with a high degree of rigor, and Ghazali explains in some detail certain methods to be followed. The speed with which he eats. Imam Ghazali does say that one should compare himself, how he eats in public and in front of people, and how he eats on his own, whether there's a change. Uh, uh, I would like to highlight something that Sheikh Hamza Yusuf highlighted in the idea of being present, the idea of wholesome food, and the saying the blessings, and being present. So this is the ni'mah, recognizing the ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The very idea of fast food is not fast. This is really fast food, the way you people line up, or you just order, take it from the window, and just drive and consume, and the one is not present at all. That's fast food. It should not be fast. That's us, not the food itself. Number 4, exposition of the variance in the rule of and merit of hunger in accordance with the circumstances of men. Ghazali now returns to the subject of the just mean, recalling the hadith that the best of affairs is the middle course. خير الأمور أوسطها. The objective is to attain a position of equal distance from both hunger and satiety, inasmuch as these distract the seeker from the remembrance of God. Yet the path to this equilibrium usually lies through a program of hunger and fasting, which can only be relaxed when the nafs has thereby been subdued. Number 5, an exposition of the true nature of good and bad character. This brief section explains that the practice of self denial in the matter of food is accompanied by two risks. Number one, the novice may eat in secret to preserve his reputation, thereby committing hidden polytheism, shirk khafi. Number two, he may be successful in renouncing his desire for food, but take delight in the fact that he is known to do so. Ghazali concludes that it is spiritually healthier for both of these people to eat more and publicly rather than fall prey to either hypocrisy or conceit. Number 6, to discourse on sexual desire. Ghazali now comes to the second of the two desires. A different approach is to be adopted for this, for indulgence in food is a worldly weakness, while sexual gratification is not. In an earlier book of the Ihya, he had discussed marriage, and the present section recapitulates some of this discussion. But whereas the book of marriage had included details on the actual practice and legal conditions of wedlock, together with advice on the rights and proper conduct of both parties, the present section and the two which follow are largely confined to a discussion of the appetite itself. Sexual desire has been created for two beneficial reasons. Number one, the perpetuation of the species, and number two, to provide a pleasurable foretaste of the bliss of paradise. And yet it can also destroy both religion and the world if it is not controlled and subjugated and restored to a state of equilibrium. These are many There are many indications in the Quran, the tradition, of the extreme danger of lust, metonymically referred to as woman. Again, the golden mean is the ideal. The man of God errs neither towards celibacy nor towards excess, which is amorous passion, ashq, for the former is unnatural, and the latter a distraction. The whole story that people, the dating and knowing each other for long periods and not getting married, or getting married and getting divorced almost immediately, and the very high rate of divorce, almost at 50% or a little bit more today amongst newlywed couples. There's a loss of the meaning uh, of the family and why people come together. Both spouses are not perfect, and if one is seeking perfection, uh, that's going to be a serious problem. And if you divorce your spouse, or you ask for a divorce, the next one will be also imperfect. This is not really an excuse for abuse or. Number 7, an exposition of the aspirants. When before that, the unnatural celibacy is unnatural, but there are many forms that are definitely they run against human nature. The the, the mushrooming gender identities. Out of a sudden, it used to be male, female. Of course, there are medical situations, but in general, it's either male or female. And nowadays, they just keep creating uh, gender identities around sexuality. Number 7, an exposition of the aspirant's obligations regarding the renunciation or understand and undertaking of marriage. Marriage, although it is the way of the Prophet ﷺ, has drawbacks as well as advantages. In particular, beginners on the path are likely to find married life a distraction and should therefore be celibate unless, that is, their desire be so strong that it cannot be weakened through fasting. Ghazali then discusses Nadar, the vice of ogling attractive women, which is the necessary prelude to unlawful sex. To avoid distraction and possible mortal sin, the spiritual aspirant should cast down his eyes when women pass by. In keeping with the usual Islamic ethic, men and women who are neither married nor related should only speak with one another or with each other for purposes of general necessity. Still, worse than looking at strange women is looking at adolescent boys, and Ghazali, conforming to Muslim values, condemns homosexuality in the strongest terms. He, if you take the argument to its logical conclusion, if people become homosexuals, then this is the end of life. Ghazali then turns his attention briefly to the conditions of a successful marriage and cites some tales of Sufis who served their wives in the house or endured their bad temper with a commendable mildness. He closes with some stories which stress the importance which the early Muslims attached to marriage. Uh, Sufis serving their wives in the house. Um, well, the Prophet ﷺ, we should always remember that we have several traditions. كان يرثي ثوبه ويخصف نعله. He used to patch his own clothing. He had some needlework, and he used to fix his own shoes. كان يصنع شيئا يخزن شيئا. Yes, he was orderly. He putting things in order at home. He used the to cut the meat for his family. He used to milk the she goat. He used to in one tradition that has general, let's say like a general, he used to do house chores. كان يكون في مهنة أهله أو كما قال. He used to do house chores. So we do not need Western feminism at all. Just simply know the tradition in general, not only one particular hadith. Know the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And there were those who, during the time of Umar al-Khattab, one of the governors in Sham, he used to go late to office, as we call it. And when he inquired about this, he said that he will do the house chores before leaving to office. Number 8, and this is an exposition of the merit of him who encounters desire of his sex and his eye. In exposition number 6, Ghazali had explained that one of the dangers of the sex drive is that when it is aroused, the mental faculties are partially suspended. It is thus better not to arouse it, for it is easy to restrain a horse from entering a stable door, but once it has done so, to pull it out again by the tail is extremely difficult. The present section claims our admiration for those who have succeeded in accomplishing this and shows that it entails abundant reward from God, for it is the most intense of all forms of disciplining the nafs. So alhamdulillah, we have read the Abdul Hakim Murad's lengthy introduction. I think it's very important as an introduction to both books, and with notes that go beyond the books themselves. Inshallah, in the next session we'll begin reading directly from the book of on disciplining the soul, كتاب رياض النفس. Until then, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.